Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Zuckerberg, for being here today. I appreciate your testimony. The full scope of a Facebook user's activity can print a very personal picture, I think. And additionally, you have those 2 billion users that are out there every month, and so we all know that's larger than the population of most countries. So how many data categories do you store, does Facebook store, on the categories that you collect?
Senator, can you clarify what you mean by data categories?
There's some past reports that have been out there that indicate that Facebook collects about 96 data categories for those 2 billion active users. That's 192 billion data points that are being generated, I think, at any time from consumers globally. So how many does Facebook store out of that? Do you store any?
Senator, I'm not actually sure what that is referring to.
On the points that you collect information, if we call those categories, how many do you store of information that you are collecting?
Senator, the way I think about this is there are 2 broad categories. This probably doesn't line up with whatever the specific report that you were seeing is, and I can make sure that we follow up with you afterwards to get you the information you need on that. The 2 broad categories that I think about are content that a person has chosen to share and that they have complete control over. They get to control when they put it into the service, when they take it down, who sees it. And then the other category are data that are connected to making the ads relevant. You have complete control over both. You can turn off the data related to ads. You can choose not to share any content or control exactly who sees it or take down the content in the former category.
And does Facebook store any of that?
Yes.
How much do you store of that? All of it? All of it? Everything we click on? Is that in storage somewhere?
Senator, we store data about what people share on the service and information that's required to do ranking better, to show you what you care about in news feed.
Do you store text history, user content, activity, device location?
Senator, some of that content, with people's permission, we do store.
Do you disclose any of that?
Yes, Senator, in order for people to share that information with Facebook, I believe that almost everything that you just said would be opt-in.
Right. And the privacy settings, it's my understanding that they limit the sharing of that data with other Facebook users. Is that correct?
Senator, yes. Okay. Every person gets to control who gets to see their content.
And does that also limit the ability for Facebook to collect and use it?
Senator, yes, there are controls that determine what Facebook can do as well. So, for example, people have a control about face recognition. If people don't want us to be able to help identify when they're in photos that their friends upload, then they can turn that off.
Right.
And then we won't store that kind of template for them.
And there was some action taken by the FTC in 2011. And you wrote a Facebook post at the time on a public page on the internet that it used to seem scary to people, but as long as they could make their page private, they felt safe sharing with their friends online. Control was key. And you just mentioned control. Senator Hatch asked you a question and you responded there about complete control. So you and your company have used that term repeatedly, and I believe you use it to reassure users. Is that correct? That you do have control and complete control over this information?
Well, Senator, this is how the service works. The core thing that Facebook is, and all of our services, WhatsApp, right, Instagram, Messenger. So
is this then a question of Facebook is about feeling safe, or are users actually safe? Is Facebook being safe?
Senator, I think Facebook is safe. I use it, and my family use it, and all the people I love and care about use it all the time. These controls are not just to make people feel safe, it's actually what people want in the product. The reality is that when you, just think about how you use this yourself. You don't want to share, like you take a photo, you're not going to always send that to the same people. Sometimes you're going to want to text it to one person. Sometimes you might send it to a group. I bet you have a page. You'll probably want to put some stuff out there publicly so you can communicate with your constituents. There are all these different groups of people that someone might want to connect with, and those controls are very important in practice for the operation of the service, not just to build trust, although I think that providing people with control also does that, but actually in order to make it so that people can fulfill their goals with the service.
Senator Coons.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Grassley. Thank you, Mr. Zuckerberg, for joining us today. I think the whole reason we're having this hearing is because of a tension between two basic principles you've laid out. First, you've said about the data that users post on Facebook, you control and own the data that you put on Facebook. You've said some very positive, optimistic things about privacy and data ownership. But it's also the reality that Facebook is a for-profit entity that generated $40 billion in ad revenue last year by targeting ads. In fact, Facebook claims that advertising makes it easy to find the right people, capture their attention, and get results, and you recognize that an ad-supported service is, as you said earlier today, best aligned with your mission and values. But the reality is there's a lot of examples where ad targeting has led to results that I think we would all disagree with or dislike or would concern us. You've already admitted that Facebook's own ad tools allowed Russians to target users, voters, based on racist or anti-Muslim or anti-immigrant views, and that may have played a significant role in an election here in the United States. Just today, Time magazine posted a story saying that wildlife traffickers are continuing to use Facebook tools to advertise illegal sales of protected animal parts. And I am left questioning whether your ad targeting tools would allow other concerning practices like diet pill manufacturers targeting teenagers who are struggling with their weight, or allowing a liquor distributor to target alcoholics, or a gambling organization to target those with gambling problems. I'll give you one concrete example. I'm sure you're familiar with ProPublica back in 2016. Highlighted that Facebook lets advertisers exclude users by race in real estate advertising. There was a way that you could say that this particular ad, I only want to be seen by white folks, not by people of color, and that clearly violates fair housing laws and our basic sense of fairness in the United States. And you promptly announced that that was a bad idea, you were going to change the tools, and that you would build a new system to spot and reject discriminatory ads that violate our commitment to fair housing. And yet a year later, a follow-up story by ProPublica said that those changes hadn't fully been made, and it was still possible to target housing advertisement in a way that was racially discriminatory. And my concern is that this practice of making bold and engaging promises about changes in practices, and then the reality of how Facebook has operated in the real world, are in persistent tension. Several different senators have asked earlier today about the 2011 FTC consent decree that required Facebook to better protect users' privacy. And there are a whole series of examples where there have been things brought to your attention, where Facebook has apologized and has said we're going to change our practices and our policies, and yet there doesn't seem to have been as much follow-up as would be called for. At the end of the day, policies aren't worth the paper they're written on if Facebook doesn't enforce them. And I'll close with a question that's really rooted in an experience I had today as an avid Facebook user. I woke up this morning and was notified by a whole group of friends across the country asking if I had a new family or if there was a fake Facebook post of Chris Coons. I went to the one they suggested. It had a different middle initial than mine. And there's my picture with Senator Dan Sullivan's family. Same schools I went to, but a whole lot of Russian friends. Dan Sullivan's got a very attractive family, by the way.
And keep that for the record there, Mr. Chairman.
The friends who brought this to my attention included people I went to law school with in Hawaii and our own Attorney General in the state of Delaware. And fortunately, I've got, great folks who work in my office. I brought it to their attention. They pushed Facebook, and it was taken down by midday. But I'm left worried about what happens to Delawareans who don't have these resources It's still possible to find Russian trolls operating on the platform. Hate groups thrive in some areas of Facebook, even though your policies prohibit hate speech, and you've taken. The core question is, isn't it Facebook's job to better protect its users? And why do you shift the burden to users to flag inappropriate content and make sure it's taken down?
Senator, there are a number of important points in there, and I think it's clear that this is an area, content policy enforcement, that we need to do a lot better on over time. The history of how we got here is we started off in my dorm room with not a lot of resources and not having the AI technology to be able to proactively identify a lot of this stuff. So just because of the sheer volume of content, the main way that this works today is that people report things to us, and then we have our team review that. And as I said before, by the end of this year, we're going to have more than 20,000 people at the company working on security and content review because this is important. Over time, we're going to shift increasingly to a method where more of this content is flagged upfront by AI tools that we develop. We've prioritized the most important types of content that we can build AI tools for today, like terror-related content, where I mentioned earlier that our systems that we deploy, I think, are taking down 99% of the ISIS and Al-Qaeda-related content that we take down before a person even flags them to us. If we fast forward 5 or 10 years, I think we're going to have more AI technology that can do that in more areas. And I think we need to get there as soon as possible, which is why we're investing in that.
I couldn't agree more. I just think we can't wait 5 years to get housing discrimination and personally offensive material out of Facebook. Thank you,
I agree.
Chairman.
Senator Sass.